Great, thank you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started, and I'll try to pay attention here if Pat does join us. I'm going to turn up my volume here a little bit. I don't know that I've met everyone here. Dave Parker, I think I've seen you on some live fact calls maybe, or I mean, I've just watched them after the fact. So, and Adrian, I certainly know your name, and Lee, I feel like we met a million years ago, maybe. Have you been on? You've been on the.
I've owned my place on the island for over 30 years, but for quite a lot of it, I was off somewhere else working.
Okay. So I'm not sure if anybody else, what I was hoping to do, well, first of all, let's start at the beginning. I wanted to thank Leica for listening to some community concerns about small planes and the frequency of low-flying planes over the island, and being willing to provide this opportunity for community members to get together to talk about the concerns. And I want to thank all of you again for being here and for your interest. So I'm the chair, since it was my idea that I took it to Leica, and so that made me chair.
Well, it doesn't have to make you chair. Remember, this is an organizational.
No, I know. I'm being a little tongue in cheek,
but it does make sense.
And Alan is our technical support person for Leica, and Greg is our Leica liaison, and also has a fair amount of background. I'm learning more all the time in aviation. So I was hoping that we could each go around and just kind of say what brought you to this, what your concern or interest is, and perhaps a little bit about applicable skills or background that you might have that we might find helpful. Does anybody want to volunteer to start?
Oh, I'll go first.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
I'm Dave Parker. I'm new to the island. Fall of 2019 is when we bought our place. So I'm still trying to get to know people, which has been hard with COVID, and to know more about the island and, kind of what the issues are. This one just sort of made me, my curiosity got the better of me. I don't have any preconceived notions. I was a little surprised to find out that it was an issue, because to me this island is very quiet, but it depends where you're coming from, I suppose. So I'm here to kind of just check it out.
May I ask what part of the island you are on?
I live just south of Adrian, just before the Baker Reserve on Seacrest.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right at the waist there, but
Sure.
sort of up
Which
against where the mountain
means
starts.
that when the helicopters fly over his place, they'd run into the mountain. That's why it's quiet there.
That's true.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dave, and welcome. And I know it's been hard to get out into the community during the last couple of years. So, Adrian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, we live on Seacrest, right where Sunrise Cove is, at the end of Sunrise Cove Road. Our property has the old barn, and it's the old homestead that was here that used to go across Seacrest and meet Charlie Baker's ranch. But now that Seacrest came in, it cut that old homestead in half. So we're on the waterfront part of what's left. And my reason is really pretty much the Peace Health helicopters. They go over, we're kind of in the gap where they end up then going over probably Charlie Baker's ranch and our property and our nearby neighbors. not far enough south to affect Dave. And it's constant. I mean, they go over several times a day and they're very low, and some of them aren't low, but most of them are, like they're going over an abandoned rock and they're just too low. I mean, much lower than the airplanes.
Mhm.
And there's usually one right after we go to bed. And sometimes some of them are higher, some of them are lower, but they rattle our house,
Yeah.
and those guys are in a hurry. And they're not all emergency things. They shuttle the doctors back and forth to the clinic out there on San Juan Island. And some of them are emergency things, but the regular ones daily are probably just, shuttling people back and forth out there to the mini hospital they have out there.
Mhm.
And, it's irritating. They don't have to fly this low and they don't have to fly right, at the same place all the time. I don't know. We're in a direct route. There's lots of issues with it, but that's my beef. So not really with the airport and the port, but probably with Peace Health.
Adrian, I'm just curious, where do they take off from?
The hospital, mostly. And probably the airport. And they go out to Friday Harbor. And they do it daily, at least once and multiple times sometimes. Yeah. And the physicians, it's hard to get out there, so they shuttle the physicians back and forth. And some of those guys fly pretty low. Yeah.
Are these the blue ones or the red and white ones, or have you seen a difference, or have you tracked them, or do you?
It's the Peace Health one. I
Yeah.
can't recall what it is, but it's
Yeah.
definitely the Peace Health copter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, something to look into, yeah. And I think that because of your location, I know the Coast Guard often uses that Sunrise Road as a kind of a visual.
Yeah.
You're right at the
I,
end.
I have no beef with airplanes. Personally, we hear them. Some of them are lower, some of them are higher. And the other helicopters, I have no problem with, but just the Peace Health, they do it every day. And they tend to do one between 8:30 and 10 o'clock at night every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, every day.
Okay.
And some of them are low enough to actually rattle our house. I just don't think that's necessary.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Like
thank
to
you.
do something
Yeah.
about that. The port won't care about that. That's,
No.
We'll see.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and we've been on the island. I've had a place here for over 20 years, and my wife Kim and I have been full-time residents for about 5-6 years, but been on the island a long time.
Do you have the coffee sign on the barn?
Yeah, the drive-through coffee shop.
I
Yeah,
keep waiting to drive through.
I keep waiting. I have a can out there. Just put your money in, and I'll give you your change later. We take big bills. Yeah.
Well, I'll go next. Thank you, Adrian. I guess maybe I should have gone first. I live kind of in this, just kind of north of you, at the end of Constitution Road on the Seacrest end. So I'm on kind of on the north side of the Auto Preserve. And if you draw a straight line from the airport to Friday Harbor, my house and these houses along here are all kind of in the direct line.
I bet.
And so they vary a little bit sometimes, but it's a pretty steady back and forth of planes and helicopters. And so I've just got involved with this a few years ago, just trying to find out and learn more about what the rules are, and trying to write friendly notes to some of the local the smaller airlines, work with the port, and have met with some frustration. So so I'm hoping that as a community that we can have a little bit more voice than just individuals.
Mhm.
Talking to any of the pilots, I have had experiences where talking to or sending, I try to keep them super friendly to the Navy, and saying, hey, your planes are flying really low over the island. Is it, if it's not necessary, perhaps you can, and they've stopped. So I do think that it helps to just kind of bring it, remind people that there's pilots, that there's people living here, and
When you say the Navy, you think are you talking about the Whidbey Island
mhm.
guys that practice and come up this way, or used to a good bit?
They used to, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think some other people responded to them too. So at any rate,
They're great. That's great. Yeah.
I think that it does help, for people who are receptive. There's going to be some that aren't, but
Yeah.
so who'd like to go next?
I
I
will,
will.
because I'm quick.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm here for the tech. Yeah, and I'm a supporting role.
Okay.
And I've been on the island, was it 3-4 years? Something. I'm a newbie.
Thanks, Alan.
Lee, you or me?
Okay, I'll do it. Name is Lee Mosley. I've owned the place since, I don't know, the mid 80s, and love it here. But I unfortunately had jobs that took me elsewhere. So I've just recently returned, and I don't know that many people on the island anymore. I know faces and I know names, but I don't always know the names and faces together. And I've been fascinated with aircraft and flying for a long time, and I've flown several small aircraft over the years. So I know a little bit about all of this. To me, when an airplane goes over, I want to go out and just look at it. But I'm not directly in the flight path, and I don't have helicopters that are actually shaking the pictures off the windows, off the walls.
Yeah.
And
Not quite that bad, but
yeah, it can be annoying. And normally around an airport, there are any number of noise abatement practices that are required. So if you have an approach to an airport, a pilot is advised to avoid certain areas because it's highly populated, and people are bothered by it. And generally speaking, people are observant of that. But in a case like this, where we're a rural community, we're not identified that I know of by the FAA as being a concentrated population, although that's possible to do. And the FAA doesn't really define what a concentrated population is. It's kind of a case-by-case basis. And really, if 8 or 10 people are all standing in one place, that's enough to be convinced. And pilots are supposed to fly at least 1,000 feet above whatever the highest projection is, and 2,000 feet away from such concentrations. So there are ways to report this to the FAA and ask them to make some adjustments in what they advise pilots to do as far as distance and nighttime activities and all kinds of things that they can impose upon pilots, and probably should. I want to address the business of helicopters for just a second, and then not introduce myself much more. Helicopters operate in a completely different regime than a fixed wing aircraft. For a fixed wing airplane, altitude is your friend because it gives you time. So if you're way high and you lose power or you have a problem, you can look around and have miles and miles and miles to glide to find safety. With a helicopter, altitude is your worst enemy. If something goes wrong, you need to be on the ground really fast because they don't have much, they can auto gyro in. But most helicopters, if they're in trouble, they want to be low and they want to get on the ground as soon as they can. And because of that, the normal flight pattern of a helicopter is lower than the normal flight path of fixed-wing aircraft. And they get used to that. And where a helicopter can comfortably feel they can fly 500-600 feet above the ground, an airplane is normally restricted to about 1,000 feet or more above the ground, unless it's like totally desert. So we need to inform ourselves a little bit about what the rules are, and then what we can do maybe to suggest changes to those. And the Bellingham Airport may not be the best place to go for that. It's probably the FAA and their flight service centers. There's a branch in and around Seattle, and also in what's on the other side of the state, that Spokane. And a letter of concern to them would be a good idea, because pilots normally will obey whatever the rules are if they're aware of it. And many of them probably fly over the island and pretty much think of it as close to unpopulated. And
Right.
from the air, except for rare occasions, it looks it. All our houses are kind of tucked in among the trees and so forth. And it's only some of the ones that have a little bit of expansive land or a farm or whatever. And that looks pretty sparse. And so it's not so much in the defense of the pilots as it is in that we just have a reality here that they're probably not very aware that they are flying over somebody's house, and that person has every bit of the same rights as anyone for consideration. And it's not all that difficult just to move a little north or south, and you're not in anybody's hair anymore. So sorry for going off on that, but
It's all good
I think we
information.
got options, and they do listen.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I'm Greg Hall. I'm retired Air Force. I spent 20 years in the command and control business, which included flight following. I ran the tactical air operations center over in Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm with thousands of flights a day, every day of fighters. I've kept track of airplanes in multiple ways. I've flown more places than most people in the Air Force did. I traveled all over Alaska and a variety of other places in the world. I spent the latter part of my life in state employment. I traveled throughout the state of Alaska. I kind of cracked up when Kathy said her daughter was out in a little town called Igigik, and I happen to know where it is and have been there. Total population of 39. So I've traveled in small planes. I've been all over the place, and I understand flight following, flight tracking, and some of the issues concerning safety. So when Mary Ross brought this first to my attention, that Kathy had come to her and said, hey, there's this lady on the island and she has complaints about low flying aircraft, you know, it's kind of like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, fine, whatever, yeah, okay, I'll listen. And Kathy came on in, and Kathy didn't just be an individual living in a house with one complaint that I've heard none from. I've been here, wow, a whopping 6 years. I live all the way on down in Seismic Mistakes, up into the hillside itself, in a bowl where I hear planes every now and then off in the distance, and once in a while a helicopter overhead, but I don't get the traffic, and so I don't pay as much attention to it. But Kathy came in with some information, 40 people on the island. That was huge. 40 people on the island signed a petition. That got my attention. Then I looked at the information she brought. Then I looked at the BIAC seat with Bellingham Airport and denied a seat. Then I reviewed my FAA guidelines of, well, gee, are we a settlement? Lummi Island Community Association. It's the island. The city is spread out. It used to be the city of Beach years and years and years ago, but we're spread out. And Lee hit it dead on. Our houses are spread on into trees. You wouldn't see mine hardly flying over at all. So are we a community? Well, we say we're a community for the whole island. Got my attention. The fact that that many members had enough concern in this community said, yeah, this is worth looking into. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized LICA, and I happen to be president of LICA, needs to get involved. So I am the board liaison. My role is both to bring the information back to the board and the public in many different ways, to act as the representative with LICA. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We don't get involved politically. However, committees, as in public committees, we
Advisory,
organize. I'm sorry,
advisory.
advisory committees, of which this is an advisory committee, to which we will then take that information forward toward decision makers, those that need to know. 20 years in the military, numerous years with state and bureaucracy, the one thing I learned was data drives decisions. When I look at the FAA guidelines themselves of what constitutes, these altitudes, like Lee was talking about, 500 feet over, unpopulated areas, et cetera, 1,000 feet over communities and congested areas, and it's not clearly defined. I see a couple other different little gaps on in here. That what are we? Where do we fall on in that? With the helicopters, I believe those pilots fly the old-fashioned version of IFR. Lee will laugh about this. It's called I follow roads. They go straight down Sunset. Oh, look, there's Sunset. There's my cutoff. Whereas the pilots coming out of Friday Harbor flying fixed wing look at Constitution Avenue, which is another direct line. Oh, look, I follow that road. It's a shortcut. I take it. Once I've established a shortcut and a path through the forest, we tend to take the same shortcut through the forest over and over and over again. We don't make new roads or whatever. So the same neighbors get the same flights over and over and over again. You get the helicopters, Kathy gets the fixed wings out of Island Air and a variety of others. Boom, there it is. There's your line. Well, data drives decisions, 500 feet, 1,000 feet. I want to know the data. I want to know, where are they flying? How do we look at that? There's software for that. We've looked at a variety of different. There's software that'll tell us, that'll show us what altitude are they at? When are they at? Who are they? What's their tail number? If they're violating airspace, or if they're consistently at a particular level that is below the threshold that we would like, then we can take that data, like Lee was saying, to Spokane, take it to FAA, take it, even BIAC, whatever. Are we on the flight path of descent on into Bellingham? And as far as I can tell, we are not on a descent type corridor if they're flying below 2,500 feet, because they aren't on final path. They have not gotten into that descent pattern to make the curve. Once you cross over Lummi Island, once you get over a little farther in the water, yes. That's one that Lee's going to have to maybe take a look at. Lee, where does it fit in the charts? Because what I've seen, we're on a line, we're on a path. I don't think
the only descent that might apply to us would be for the larger jets, because they come in from a long ways and they're descending to get down to pattern altitude. But they are well above the
Mhm.
pattern altitude for this airport or any others. I think the nature of the aircraft that we primarily seem to have difficulty with are the helicopters on one hand and small light aircraft on the other. And it happens to be, for safety reasons, each airport has an established pattern altitude. All aircraft are expected to come in at a certain angle to establish a certain altitude and to go around either in a left or a right hand pattern so that nobody runs into each other and everybody knows where they're supposed to be. Well, it happens that the pattern altitude for Bellingham is right around 1,000 feet, 1,000, 1,100 feet. Pattern altitude for Orcas Island is the same, and the pattern altitude for, where was I? Everybody's going there.
Friday Harbor.
Mhm.
Friday Harbor is the same. Now, a pilot doesn't necessarily want to spend a great deal of time climbing if all he's going to do is in 5 minutes descend again. You're burning up a lot of gasoline. And so I can see possibly that once they get up to pattern altitude, they realize I'm only going to be a few minutes in the air before I'm getting into Friday Harbor. I'll just stay at this altitude and cross Little Lummi Island and nobody will care. It could easily be that they're a little bit low from what they should be, because I'm at 80 feet here, but some of you folks are up a couple of hundred feet, which means that
236.
you're to the point that if they're flying at 1,000 feet, they're coming over you at 800, which is
Right.
not legal.
Exactly.
They ought to be clearing you at least by 1,000 feet wherever they are.
So Lee, what about speed? Like if they were to, I've had a couple pilots say, we could ask some of the pilots to perhaps just slow down a little bit over Lummi Island in terms of it being a little quieter than if they were just in kind of, is that something that makes any sense to you?
It does some. I haven't really heard anybody turning high revs coming over the island. Of course, if you have a twin engine aircraft, it's going to make more noise and so forth. But you can tell when an airplane is moving fast. They have a sound to them. And speed could make a difference, but seldom is that the issue when it comes to just the amount of noise that an airplane makes. It's almost always that they're low and near you, and you'll hear that. Again, with helicopters, particularly, their wings spin, and so they tend to beat the air. And if they're coming in at some angles against the wind, you'll hear a whop, whop, whop that is pretty loud. But mostly it's if the aircraft is near you, it needs not to be near you. If it's low above you, it needs not to be low above you. And that will solve many of the problems of excess noise and the sense that there's a great deal of traffic. And there are plenty of places around here where a slight diversion in your track would get you over open water and not create a problem, or go around the other side of Lummi Mountain for that matter. And it would be a matter of a few seconds flight time and make a big difference for the people who live up high enough that the planes are probably clipping into a little lower airspace than they should be.
I would say most of the planes over I'm at 220 some odd feet here. And so, and it's it rises quickly off the water here. So I'm not right down on the water, but up a little bit. And I've had planes, I use a couple different flight tracker apps, and I've had some planes that just seem to barely clear the trees here, and they'll be, at 400 feet or something. So it's kind of scary. I've also had helicopters emergency, like the healthcare helicopters fly basically lower and then lift really quickly here, which is pretty terrifying, like especially at night. And then you sometimes use their spotlights. It's like,
Yep.
do you know where you are? This is rather disconcerting.
Yeah, if they're using their headlights to see if they're going to run into anything, that's
They're too low.
yeah, that's low.
Pretty terrifying. Well, these are really good things. I guess these are things that I was really hoping to kind of pull together a lot of this information and the data, collect some data so we know, really know what we're looking at and how high they're flying. My fallback has been to ask pilots to fly, to vary their routes over the island. I mean, I can tell you from where I am, if they go, a half a mile in one direction or the other, it makes a huge difference to me.
And it spreads it out across.
It spreads it out.
So it's not always the same route, and
Exactly.
it's not like consistent.
And
Well,
there are,
a pilot would probably say that it's not a safe practice to vary the routes and have people going this direction one time and that another. It's a lot safer if there are corridors, just like there are on the water, where incoming traffic goes this way and outgoing traffic goes that way. And there's a place of separation between the two so that nobody's going to run into each other and they're not going to be confused or surprised. And it's relatively easy to have the FAA take a look at traffic patterns and concentrations of residents and that kind of thing, and determine where what a good flight path would be from point A to point B, and then recommend that as good practice. So I'm thinking that with a message to individual pilots might be one thing, that if you're going to be flying, be aware that there are people on the island and
right.
Fly at a respectful altitude and so forth. But as a practice, it should be made more regular so that nobody is making decisions in the middle of the air without any particular idea of why or what. And it's also a lot safer to have a standard practice than it is loose guidance about being more respectful, because people might not even really know what that means. They might be flying over a part of the island and wondering whether there are people down there who might be bothered. And they might choose a place that they think is perfectly fine, and it turns out to be right over the gathering place or whatever with a whole bunch of people. And then there are also just the reminders that just because you're going to take off here and land over here doesn't mean that you shouldn't get to a proper altitude and not just go skipping over rocks. And the helicopters, I don't know about them. That's a completely different world to me and to a lot of fixed wing pilots as to how they operate and why they operate that way. And then on top of that, there are the emergency helicopters that may feel that they have sufficient reason to do what they do. The FAA, in unpopulated areas, you don't have to be any more than 500 feet above a human being even.
Right.
And over the water, if nobody's there, there is no limit.
Right.
So every now and then some hot shot will fly the airplane down so that the wheels are rolling on the water, and it's perfectly legal until you come over a guy in a boat, and all of a sudden it's not legal. So I totally agree. Data drives, and to know who's doing it, when they're doing it, what they're doing, would be very important, and how often.
Yeah.
What time of the day, so forth. And from the ground, it's kind of hard. I don't know all the technology that might apply right now, but if we had some way to track aircraft, know where they were, know their altitudes, all of that, Alan's hands in the air.
Can you go to allow screen share, please?
Okay.
I'll give you a minute to figure that one out.
I saw that
Yeah,
somewhere. You might have to remind me where it is.
I'm not a host, so I can't even see it right now.
Okay.
It would be in,
Should be at the top, I think.
yeah, go to
Is it?
the meeting information thing, or somewhere up at the top left-hand corner. You don't
Mhm.
want to, let's see.
I saw it earlier. I'm sorry. I wasn't.
It's all right. You could click on your green box where it says screen share, and it might be in that too.
Okay, hang on. Just disappeared here.
So while we're sorting out the technology, I have a question. I totally agree about the need for data. I don't think without it, we can present much of a case. So my question is, are the choices, is the only choice for someone to sit in front of the computer, which I did for a while today with the ADS software, which is fascinating to look at the planes and who they are and what they're doing. Or does the FAA have all these flight paths archived and we can ask them to do a big data dump?
They're actually, I was going to show everybody the ADS.
I think I clicked that.
Got it?
And share.
Yes, you did. Okay, I'll just talk over this. This is the ADS, and there are two pretty good ones. This one is, let me see, make sure my tracks are running. Okay, because while we've been talking, I've been tracking this helicopter, and it's right now at 1,000 feet, and it started out at 125 feet, but it's obviously going up. But there's this one, and there's another one that gives you the data in 3-dimensional view, which Leica has it's been authorized for us to pay for that, because the 3-dimensional view we feel will be more helpful. Now, ADS itself, if we pay for a membership in that, we have access to, I think it's 5 years of historical data that is available through their database systems. So we can dump data. We just have to have these
Alan,
memberships.
how can that data be parsed? I mean, we're really only interested in flights that go over Lummi Island. What kind of...
I don't know yet because we haven't paid for that one.
And there, let me address that one. That's one of the ones I've talked to with Spyglass people.
Right, that's the 3-dimensional one.
We have around our nation what's called an ADIZ, the Aircraft Defense Identification Zone. You enter into that, you get fighters come on up, all kinds of other things if you're unknown, whatever, certain things. That's a buffer that sits on off. Now, I've talked with them of what's called geofencing, where we put literally like an ADIZ around our island that would then only track those aircraft that go through this window.
Yeah. And
that is in development, but currently doesn't exist in the same sort of way. So trying to geofence and put a specific area is currently, with all of these companies, a technological thing they're working on, because we are not the only ones looking at this. There are businesses, there are enterprises, there are properties out there that need to do the same sort of thing, so they know who is doing what, where, and entering their airspace and coming on through. FAA may have it as open airspace, but we want to know who's flying overhead. I don't know if the drug dealers are pushing some of that too, so they know when the feds are coming. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. I want to be able to put a fence around Lummi Island, so we look at it. I don't want to sit in front of a monitor, like you're exactly correct, David, and have to watch this. I want to then be able to pull on up specific data from an altitude, longitude, latitude rectangle, if you will, put a box around it and say anything below 2,500 feet in this corridor, that's my target. I want to know that data. So trying to parse it right now is, it gets a little more interesting. We know flight plans for, say, the typical pilots, the airlines, we know when they're going on through. Aiden has given us a thing about, gee, here are the times that the helicopter goes on through, so we can look at that, see where it is, and get an idea, altitude, where he was, where he came from. Currently, that's a work in progress.
Yeah. And like I say, I haven't looked at the ADIS, ADS database yet. If we were a feeder, I can get it for free. A feeder is somebody that helps track. It's a software defined thing that radio that they can help to track this. I'm watching right now with this helicopter. In fact, he's just been in almost the same spot, just going from real low up to 1,025 feet. It's going to be interesting to see what his track is. It looks like it's going to go right over Fleming. But we can look at that. A geofence is software defined based on latitude, longitude, and altitude. Just to explain what that is. And he's coming down. He's at 875 feet now. Oops.
So I'm just going to mention, jump in here for a second. I have the ADS and the flight radar 24 on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm outside and I hear, like, I can see this helicopter right now.
Yep.
And
N95 to AL.
you can, Adrian, you might find this helpful when those helicopters go over, because then you can actually see their, so this one looks like it's an emergency. It's an emergency. I don't know if you can see this. It's an emergency flight.
Yeah, I have it on. I'll put it up.
An
On my,
EC-35. Can you
So
zoom
it's
in
an-
a little bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is every medical helicopter an emergency designated as an emergency flight? Or is that going to get a patient, or is that ferrying someone?
It's a type code. So, you know, if you're a helicopter designed to carry bodies like an ambulance, even if you're empty, you're an ambulance.
mhm.
Can you zoom that at all, Alan?
Yeah, hold on a second.
So what I do is when I'm out, I mean, this is different than tracking, which is kind of short of that. What I've been doing is I just have my phone with me. I'm puttering around outside or I'm inside and I hear something coming in low. I pull it up to see what it is. And it's interesting because sometimes one won't show on the other. It's not consistent. Sometimes one app will show a plane and the other one won't, or show different amounts of information about the plane.
Yeah.
And then if it's something that really piques my interest, if it's particularly low, or sometimes there are like 3 of them going over at the same time, I take a screenshot and then I've got that and I've got the tail numbers and I can kind of see like what's happening. But I would really like to see, so is this something that we still feel, I mean, Alan, do you think, and Greg, is this something that is still possible to do, to capture?
Yeah, I think it is. The this helicopter, by the way, went over the north end of the island at
Yeah.
900 feet. So I'm going to stop the share now. I was just curious. The from what we're looking at, the sky glass, which is the three-dimensional one, pulls in from all the different sources. So like you were saying on for your phone apps, you'll see a plane on one or a helicopter one, but you don't see it on the other. That's because they're looking at different data sources. What Skyglass is doing is they're combining all those data sources and representing it as well with altitude. So that's why that we internally with Leica, we've talked about this, that we're looking at paying for 1 year of the Spyglass. And I know they've got some more new features coming. They have a new release that was just released. When was it, Greg? Yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yeah, new release yesterday. But we can't see it full on yet because we haven't paid for that membership. And we already would have paid for it, except they're having problems with their payment acceptance systems right now. So, and I'm actually working with the developer to help fix that. So,
And
I
the
think-
developer is interested in us.
yeah,
I contacted them early on in this process and said, hey, I like what I'd have given my eye teeth in the military during Desert Storm to have this kind of tracking capability, be able to watch things like this, because you can literally 3D relationally turn this, look at it, also get your true ground level. So when you're looking at, what's a real altitude? Going over AGL, actual ground level. As they go over that mountain, you got that clipping Lee was talking about. I was at 1,000 feet over the water. Suddenly, I'm at 800 or 500 or whatever. And now I can look at that and actually see what that deviation is. And that's just that much more data to be able to play with.
yeah. I'm not controlling the speed of this, so it might make you a little seasick. But this is what they're doing is they're giving you you can filter this so you don't see all this clutter, but they're showing the entire track in all 3 dimensions with the identifiers and everything else.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's skookum stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we're still planning on doing that. We're just waiting for the payment system to work.
So when I'm sorry. I just wanted to follow up because I think that in my conversations with the FAA and Lee, I think this is really interesting because I think you were saying that the FAA would look at the traffic. I have found them kind of resistant to that. In a general sense, I know that there was a couple of years ago, there was some really low flying planes out over the water in front of my place. And some of them looked like they were fast moving, they looked rather nefarious.
Yeah.
And I contacted the FAA and they said, oh no, we looked at all the flights and there haven't been any planes down there. It's like, well, I was hallucinating then.
Yeah.
But they stopped. But I didn't get the sense from them. I got the sense that if there are concerns or issues that we need to report, like specific planes, they want specific times.
Normally, they want the
tail number,
time,
all that.
the date, the place, the tail number,
Everything. Mhm.
all of that,
Right,
so they can nail an individual pilot.
right,
General concerns about just a whole lot of airplanes without the data that we're talking about.
right.
They neither have the desire nor even the ability to follow up on because it's all history. And
So we
they
would
haven't
need-
recorded any of that. So unfortunately, we might need to be more sophisticated in being able to gather the information and present it to them in a credible way. And then they will be happier to act.
Yeah,
I gotta say, among some pilots, well, there are t-shirts that say, FAA, I'm not happy until you're not happy. It's not entirely
Yeah.
a friendly organization, but I also know some wonderful people in the FAA.
Yeah, me too.
And they
Is-
really do care.
Hey, on a different track, guys, does anyone know if the 2020 census data is available for the island? Because I
No.
think population densities.
No,
Yeah.
it's, Adrian, it's not. I just checked about a week ago. They're still massaging that data, but the,
Yeah.
in between the census, they do the American Community Surveys every year. So we have
Mhm.
2019 data. And my take on it is that the population, the year-round permanent resident population of the island has been fairly flat for 10 years. It's about 900, 950. But of course, that doesn't capture all of the part-time residents, of which I am one. My legal residence still isn't here. So I don't show up on the Lummi census. And a lot of other people don't. I mean, there's
Yeah.
900 some odd homes here. So about half the people don't live here. You know,
Maybe
basically.
property data would be
Yeah.
a good.
But I will just interject. I was really curious about this absence of definition of what a condensed area is versus what a
It's
sparsely
intentional.
scented. Pardon?
I think in part because once you define a thing, then there are all these other exceptions
Yeah.
to it.
But
And
if
so
I could
there's a lot
finish,
of case law
yeah,
about
if
what
I could
will
finish,
constitute that.
I stumbled into of course, the University of Google is a treasure trove of information. And I stumbled into a nugget that suggested that once upon a time, there was a rule 107 or something that defined sparsely populated as 2 people per acre. But the FAA has no longer subscribes to that definition. So, but even then, I mean, the island is 9 square miles. We wouldn't come anywhere near that density, right?
No.
If you counted the whole island, it has to be more neighborhood by neighborhood if you want to convince that Scenic Estates is thickly settled or Isle Air is thickly settled. But you know, the middle of the island over where Mike and Joan Moy live, and I guess Catherine must be nearby there, you know, that's pretty sparsely, you know, 30-acre plot. I mean, so really depends where you are. And but beyond that, the FAA won't commit to a definition. So I think, you know, to me, this is a little problematic in that if we ever get to the point where we have data and we want to complain, I'm not sure whether we would be complaining about the 500-foot violations or the 1,000-foot violations, because we're stuck on that in no man's land there in terms of what our density is.
Alan, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just wanted to say there is a part 107, but it doesn't apply to that. It applies to remote operated aircraft. But yeah, there may well be something that they're just not prescribed to. But that'd be something interesting. This is a question I've heard that, you know, is we're not a community, we're not recognized as a community. And maybe that's something we can work on. Make it happen.
And that's exactly what got my attention. We are a community. The definition of community is where that falls. The island is defined as here, historically over 50 years worth of a community.
We have our own post office.
Settlement, key word, I'm a word guy. Settlement is also one of the words FAA uses. So instead of saying community, population density, thus, we are a settlement, and this is a settlement of community. I don't know how we want to define that, but we need to look at every single one of those words and their connotations and definitions that FAA uses. Once we establish that, and you're absolutely right, David, that's the pivotal point. What are we? Are we rural? Are we community? Are we settlement? Is there a density factor? What's that determinant? Then we define where we are altitude-wise, one way or the other, 1,000, 500. In the meantime, we can collect the data, and where it's, say, 500, is at 500 AGL. So if they're going over Catherine's at 200, are they flying at 300 feet? So 300 feet over the structure may technically be on an altimeter 500 feet, but it is not AGL.
And
Those are the things that I think we need to look at.
we need to know for sure what airspace we're in.
What it's
There's
defined
Class
as.
B, which means that you can just do anything you want to almost. I
Right.
doubt very much we fit into that, but below a certain altitude, it gets to be G. And if you're in Class G airspace, you don't really have much requirement for any kind of altitude at all. So it's again back to, are you flying over a populated area, a densely populated area? And that can be even transient. If a group of people are standing at watching an event at a oh, I don't know, at an arena somewhere, and an aircraft flies over it, they comprise for that 15 minutes they're there a dense population. So I totally agree with you. For our purposes, we need to define who we are, what constitutes what we are, and that we're a relatively permanent body of people that deserves some consideration when it comes to overflights.
Hey, guys, can I say something for a sec? I've got a cataract procedure early in the morning. I'm going to drop off.
Who's your doctor?
Dr. Dudley.
Dudley's good. I had Mattiucci.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm real
Good
excited.
luck.
I'm real excited about it. I'm only having one eye done, so. Anyway,
Well, thank you for joining us.
yeah,
And
I'd
the
like to
video,
say
the video
something.
will be up.
yeah, okay. I think we have two issues here. One's the helicopters and one's the airplanes. And I think they're going to take different approaches. I doubt if we get to a point with the helicopters where we have a legal standing to complain like we might for the altitude of the planes. I think the helicopters are 90% peace health or maybe 95% peace health. And the honey approach, the carrot approach, I think might be better with them backed up by some numbers of our population than anything else. So that's what I'm going to throw out there is I think we have two tracks because someone's in charge of that for peace health. Some individual, I think we could probably track down somehow and get their attention with here's why we'd like you to get your pilots to pretty please. Because some of them aren't bad, some of them are high, but occasionally, well, I say 25% of them are just unusually low, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
We might have to try a different approach for that problem. Which won't alleviate the airplane problem. So
I'd go a step further and I say, predict that we're going to ultimately end up dividing the airplane side of things in half again, because I think, I strongly suspect that the commercial guys like San Juan Airlines are one situation, and then
Private pilots.
Joe Blow flying out of Anacortes in his new Piper Cub for the fun of it is something else.
yeah,
And I guess I'm not always an optimist, but I'm going to predict that the commercial guys are by and large pretty conscientious. They seem to fly regular patterns, and I think, for example, I think for Orcas, they can fly just off the north end of the island because their standard approach into the south wind is from the north there.
yeah.
But like we said earlier, somebody said earlier, you know, they're supposed to be at 1,100 feet when they set up their approach to Orcas. So what's the point of climbing above 1,100,
Right.
you know, when they pass us?
I imagine when you fly over Lummi Island, especially here near me and Catherine, that it looks like you're going over a lot of water, and then there's this little hump of rock here between the Baker Mountain, and it's just nice and clear, and why not just zoom over that? Because it only takes like
You mean-
10 seconds to go over that's the narrow part of the island. And I think that's what they do. It's too bad because if it's San Juan Airlines now, whoever was running that about 5 years ago I knew that family really well and they sold it. So it's too bad because I could have approached them personally, but they don't own it anymore. And they've retired, so.
The other thing I'll just throw out, because my introduction to the San Juan Islands was by air.
Yeah.
And, so our first trip over the islands, we were sightseers, we didn't want to be so high.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I like to buzz the island and see my own place. So
Yeah.
I have to warn everyone first. Or something.
Well,
Thanks, guys. I'll follow up. Send me.
Yeah.
Do you want everyone's email? You already have that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you go on the website to the committee, there's a link to the Zoom recordings and minutes,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to see this tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm
Thanks,
gonna have
guys.
to bow out
Appreciate
too.
it.
We haven't
Thank
had dinner yet. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna sign off as well.
Okay, but just really quick, I just want to underscore what Adrian said. Adrian, I know you've got surgery in the morning if you want to.
That's all right. I just.
But I absolutely agree with the carrot approach, and that would be my first approach and has been. It just what I'm looking for, just so you all know, is that more of community, just rather than just individuals doing this, because
And that's always more
community has
effective.
had a
Yeah.
harder time. But also, I just wanted to note a couple things that I've tried to point out, which is that the population of the island is pretty much concentrated on the north 1/3 or half, even with
Right.
scenic estates down there. So there's a large portion of the island that's not populated. Obviously, we all know that, but not everyone does.
But
Orcas
Catherine, can
Island-
I interject something there? When I was looking at the ADS map,
Yeah,
I was surprised to see that the entire southern half or 40% of the island is a designated wildlife area.
yeah.
So you could solve one problem by creating another by trying to reroute traffic.
Actually, they won't allow you to reroute traffic over a wildlife area. In most charts, they're designated, you can see them, and there's written right on the chart, pilots are advised or requested not to fly below a certain altitude over that area.
Yeah, and you know what? That's not going to matter because all that is the highest part of the island.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the
I mean,
reason
they're
I-
going to go around or fly over the convenient part, which is
Yeah.
us.
Well, the reason I mention it to people when I'm talking to them about the island is they'll say, well, the island has, only 800 or 900 people on it, and, thinking that it's going to be, it's all over the whole island. And when they're
Yeah.
talking about density, it's on the northern part. But there's also the Bellingham Airport has a Friendly Skies or Friendly Neighbor program.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how active it is, but that's one avenue.
Mhm.
And then Orcas Islands noise abatement is really pretty, it was way out in front of Bellingham, and in terms of asking pilots to not fly over neighboring islands and to fly at least 1,000 feet when they are flying over them. So they do a much better job. And so I think it's important that as part of what we do is to try to reach out to some other communities and see, what have they done, and what successes or failures have they had in terms of dealing with some of these things. So I think that there's a lot of work that we can do in that regard as a community organization. Alan?
Just a couple quick things. Number one, we need more community participation in this
Thank you.
group.
Invite your friends.
That was
Uh,
great.
Good luck with surgery.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Right.
Okay, we're good.
Meeting is not over,
Nope.
however.
So
What we did not set is when our next meeting will be, nor did we finish this agenda.
Right.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking that once a month right now is plenty and probably a good goal because we're waiting for software and data.
Mhm.
Well, we're going to be the data capturers. That's this committee.
Right.
How
But-
we're going to do that right now, we
Yeah.
have to get the software and then figure out how are we going to capture that so that we do the analysis as the committee, what's the information we need, where's it at?
Right. Okay. So does once a month, does that work for everyone? I meant to grab my calendar before I sat down, but I can go.
I
grab
have it in front of me.
The
I think an initial startup once a month is probably all right, in my
yeah.
opinion.
I agree.
So
We are
this,
not in crisis situation like
Right.
public doc or any of that with any particular plans that have to be filled at a particular timeline
Okay.
to get things going.
And public doc is also at once a month now anyway. We do
Yeah.
have some special,
Now,
Yeah,
because
now,
we've
but-
got so much done.
no, we were like every week.
I know.
so would, for the, at least the time being, this is the third, this is the
Third
third
Tuesday.
Tuesday. With the third Tuesday work, that would be the 20th. Oh, no, the 19th of July.
Um,
Next meeting,
hold on,
does that work for those of
hold
us
on.
who are
I'm
here?
checking, I'm checking the community calendar.
I know meetings. more
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah. So you're talking about July,
That would be
19th.
July 19th.
yeah,
Day
July
before,
19th.
day before the Leica meeting.
Yeah.
But we don't have a Leica meeting in July.
No, we don't. And the Leica meeting is the 20th, would, if we had it, it would be the 27th.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Hold on.
So the
Okay.
Leica meetings are the fourth Wednesday? Is
Yep.
that okay? So could we just set the 19th and then the next time we'll, yeah, okay.
And you can do that, and if we discover that we need to change it, we could, but
Sure.
trying for a consistent day is very
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, I feel like this conversation has gone smoothly in terms of bringing everybody's, concerns to the, or at least some of the concerns, and hearing what people seem to be very respectful. So I'm not too concerned about that. We talked about data collection, so that's going to be an ongoing thing. I'm just looking at the agenda, trying to,
Mm,
Year long or more.
a year long,
Seriously. A year long or more.
really?
Yep.
We will review it on a monthly basis at the meetings once we start doing it and start looking at it, but you're looking at a year-long worth of data collection or at least 6 months data to be able to take something like this on into any of the authorities to say, look, we got a problem. It isn't just an one-off. When you call FAA is not going to go back and look at their history logs and all that. And gee, that's nice. We appreciate it. But, yeah, we're going to blow you off. Sorry, that's just the reality. When we take this data forward, we will take it forward through Leica as a community association, as a report of information advisory to them. Here is what is transpiring, and we want you to be aware of it. It carries a little bit more credence, a little bit more weight, and it then comes from the community. So we've got to take that data, collect it, present it on island as well. We need that ownership of more and more members of the community saying, did you know? Are you aware? Here are these things. That's pedagogical. That's really what it comes down to. You've got to educate them to what they don't know. They don't know.
And that's also why I was saying you need more participation in this committee.
Yeah.
I have two questions. Which particular FAA office did you write to? Did you write to national? Did you write to local?
I have to look back. I wrote to a couple, I think it was a regional, the one that that you're directed when you submit a complaint.
Mhm.
I believe it was a regional, but then there's also kind of, when they say local, there's a guy that I talked to that's down, I feel like he was down near the airport somewhere, in SeaTac somewhere.
Mhm.
That I talked to, pretty helpful guy. I have to go back and look at my notes.
That might be the office that Lee was talking about.
Yes,
Okay.
they would
Um,
expect any preliminary concerns, and in fact, most concerns that are local like this, to go through the regional office, and there are only the two, one here and one in Spokane. And I would agree that if we didn't have a full year's data, this being an area where there are there's a big variance in traffic and even population over summer and winter. If we didn't have the entire spectrum of information, we'd be vulnerable to the observation that, well, that's this slice of time, but it's not representative. And we'd need to be able to show that.
Yeah.
Now, the
Yeah.
emergency stuff, pretty much summer and winter. In winter, you don't have as much population, but you have a lot more stuff going on and people being hurt and whatever. In the summer, you have a lot more population, and then there's a greater risk of people being hurt. But the nature of the aircraft traffic, especially small private aircraft, most people don't fly in bad weather if they can avoid it. And on a really nice Sunday, everybody's out.
We haven't even scratched the surface of all the potential of this particular committee.
No,
And one of that is the emergency thing. And we live on the Cascadia Fault. We ever have a major earthquake here, there are literally no plans for evacuation of Lummi Island. Does
well,
not-
we don't even have a landing strip. And if it's a tsunami or something like that, in the first place, there wouldn't be a place for a boat to put in. Secondly, the waters would be horrible. And even if a boat put in, where would it go? Because
Right.
the mainland is in worse shape than we are in many cases.
Exactly. Now, we do have land identified for a potential strip that would fit a 130 on it. That's over there, over on the west side, north of Yulee by about half mile plus.
Well, there's a little airstrip there, but right now it's got cows and farm equipment in it.
Right. And I've talked quite a bit with a couple different people over there, and it's how do you develop that on out? But when we measure on it, landing capacities, they fully loaded 130. You can get a 130 on in there. You get a little over 2,000 feet, and it's like, pucker factor goes up.
Well, they're working on a vertical takeoff and landing 130. So
I know it. Don't you love it?
Yeah.
In our lifetime would be nice.
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say is, Catherine, I think your letter to the FAA, that petition, should be on the website. I went looking for it. I didn't see it there. You sent it out to us, but I think that kind of everything you've done, all the history, should be there so that everybody has a background to share on this.
I think that was an email, but okay, I'll see. If I
Yeah,
can-
you sent it in an email to us, but it didn't get up to the website. And there might be other things like that, like your written letters to, I don't remember, I didn't look at it closely, I will admit, to Island Air. Might be good to share there as well. If nothing else, it's a template for the nice ask.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, it's, let's see, getting close to 8:30 here. We didn't talk about anticipated possible tasks, we talked about collecting data. I talked briefly about, what other communities are doing. So I think, but these are just things that, a long list of possible work that seemed like.
Carry
would make
over
sense.
into the next agenda,
Yeah,
old business.
yeah. So, okay. Well, what do y'all think? We made
good,
made enough
kid.
progress tonight?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and thank
I
you
mean-
so much for kicking the ball off on this.
Yeah. and I think it really helped to have Lee here, because he has experience with this stuff. It's great that Greg is here because he has another view of it.
He's got it in the air. I've got it on the ground.
Yeah.
Between the two of us, we might have something.
I will say, I didn't mention this earlier, but I grew up in the airline industry. My dad was on the ground floor of the commercial airline industry. And so, it's kind of in my system. I understand the needs of, air. Of course, it's changed dramatically over the decades and the years, but I've had family and friends and continue to, that have small planes. So I am not an anti-plane person, and I want
Right.
all of you to know that that's not what this is about at all. So
Yeah.
I think trying to find a happy medium, and I guess I fall on the side of, giving people the opportunity to do the right thing. So like, just raising awareness. It's like when I used to work at Western, and they boarded up our whole building for a summer to replace the windows, and they were shocked that there were people inside the building working. And this reminds me of that. It's like, you do realize there's people living down here, at 6:30 in the morning, we're not excited about a plane going over it.
Or like he said, the helicopter late night.
And it does rattle, because I have noticed that they used to go over here more regularly, and I have noticed, because I'm always kind of grateful when they're not over my house. They're a little bit south of here, so
Well,
I'm sorry.
pilots generally are very respectful.
Yeah.
Their whole approach to flight is to be safe, consistent, observant. Their intent is not to create problems for anyone or for themselves.
Yeah.
But in many cases, as we mentioned earlier, they simply might not be aware.
Right.
To them, this is just a pretty little place to fly over.
Right.
And nobody has said anything much, and they've done it for a long time. So why not?
Yeah.
Mhm. It's always been thus.
And I think they just, like you said, like Island Air, they start doing their back and forth with the cannery or whatever, and they're just like zoom, 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 back and forth, all day long at sometimes. And, hey, why over
If we-
there?
If we get to the point where we put up a node, a little duckbill antenna, whatever, and we've got a node on this island, and the word gets out that we are watching.
Well,
We
Yeah.
are watching. You are on our radar. I'll guarantee you it will not take long. Pilots will change behavior.
Well, that's fine.
well, not necessarily, but like Lee says, sometimes routes need to be consistent,
Sure.
which makes a
That
lot of
makes total
sense.
sense. Yeah,
But-
absolutely.
But it's an approach. I wanted to comment on it. They're called feeder stations,
Yeah.
and they listen to the airways, and they add data to this big conglomeration of data. But I want to look at, I think we should get the application first as fast as we can, so we can start looking at that. But I want to look at what a feeder, if we can actually capture data ourselves from our own feeder station.
I like
I don't
that.
know, this is way
Yeah.
beyond me.
Yeah, I know it's, but yeah, you were talking about being able to access data.
Mhm.
What I'm saying, if we have a feeder station that talks to the big network, we might be able to pull that data for ourselves directly and programmatically
Mhm.
define this
Well, the antenna is
geofence
going to define it.
to a point, not,
Depends on
You-
where we locate, but.
yeah.
it-
Anyway, that's something else to look
Yeah,
at.
yeah,
But I think
yeah,
we
yeah.
have enough on the technology information to work more on the technology side. But I would suggest that we post up another announcement on the webpage saying that you had this meeting and put in a direct link to this recording. And let's try to get more public awareness.
And I will talk about it again tomorrow night. In my or what, we've got it.
Yeah.
I've got you, Kathy, on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, anything else?
No, I think that's it.
You can stop recording.
Okay, where's the rig stop recording?
Yeah, up in the upper left-hand corner.